Well, let's talk some Star Wars here at Bounding into Comics. Yeah, boy, Darth Vader. Yeah. That's actually not how the helmet that Luke barbecued looks like, but, whatever. It was, boy, we didn't realize how powerful a symbol that was, did we, when we saw these sequel movies? Yeah, Star Wars is pretty beaten and battered. Anyway, Star Wars Story Group writer Matt Martin, Star Wars canon is all fake anyway. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter what happens, does it? So anyway, here's the article. Star Wars Story Group Matt Martin recently declared that fans can pick and choose what is canon in Star Wars because it's all fake anyway. As reported by Disney, Star Wars is dumb and boy, truer words were never spoken. I believe that's Ichibaka's shindig there. Martin's most recent comments came after a fan asked him to clarify his previous comments regarding Star Wars canon. So someone had asked him about the old GT version of Clone Wars as canon. Now that was the original 2D cartoon, which I loved. I've only just started the new Star Wars Clone Wars series. And I'm kind of behind on it at this point, so it'll be a while before I get to that final season. But there are a lot of aspects I like about it, but the original still stands as much superior in narrative and story-wise. There's a lot to like about the series. I didn't give it a chance. I thought it looked silly and stupid, but now that I've got more respect for it now as I've been watching it, and due to recent events, boy, it looks a lot better, doesn't it? Yeah, well, anyway, he wrote, I'm of the mind that you consider anything you want canon if it makes you happy. Yeah, that's... For the most part, it still works, but there are some contradictions with other storytelling if you really care. Well, Matt, shouldn't you? Remember, Disney spent billions for this canon, and you work for them. They own Lucasfilm. So anyway, earlier in April, Martin shared an article from IO9 which declared that our fascination with canon is killing the way we value stories. Yeah, because the way you read the story and understand it and conceive of it is bad. You have to immediately forget what it stated. I mean, look, there's always a certain amount of canon and just chronology within stories. Superman comes from Krypton. You can't suddenly say that, no, he came from Apocalypse or something like, oh God, that's going to be a new idea. But, well, in the multiverse, yeah, but you can't do stuff like that. There's things like that within reason. There's going to be mistakes over time and that sort of thing, and that's understandable. But to just abandon it and trash it like this, as if it's some intellectual high point, is just nonsense. So he says, this article. So in the article, James Whitbrook writes, this craving for canon of all else is toxic. A toxic attitude. Oh, God, the word toxic is what perfectly fine word, for description and whatnot. But good Lord, is one of the many terms that is in enormous amount of abuse today. So right off the bat, that's a signal, isn't it? So anyway, not just to the way we talk about pieces of media from a critical perspective. Well, apparently you can't be critical at all. Yeah. But in fan circles as well. He elaborates, the hunger for facts above all else leads to things like filler episode becoming a derogatory term for stories that don't advance the larger ongoing plot of a narrative or don't include some shocking new revelation that someone can add to it. No, that's not it at all. First of all, they got to make sense. And filler is never going to be something that's good. It's filler to take up space primarily within a TV series. I watched the Flash series on CW. And if you took out the filler and shrunk that down to a tight 10 episode series or something like that, probably very, very good. Because plot points and whatnot that they achieve there are great, but they don't have the material for the amount of episodes that they force themselves into. And so you end up with repetitive conversations and dialogue, and it goes nowhere. And for him to sit here and say that that's somehow a positive, which he seems to be suggesting, at least in this snippet here that Bounding in the Comics is providing, it's absurd. Whitbrook goes on to write, the need robs discussions about the stories we get of nuance and interpretation, because who cares what you think happened when there's an answer from the word of God to the question that you might have had, and more sinisterly, beyond the way it shapes our discourse. It's a craving that further enmeshes our love of a world, not to the world itself, but to the masters behind that. Oh, he's full of crap. No. Again, there's a chronology to stories. There's a means by which certain characteristics and whatnot are established. And when you completely change that, like in the case of Last Jedi with Luke Skywalker, you need a longer explanation for it. You could do it, but you need to have that connect and evolve within the nature of the story. By the way, with Star Wars, Last Jedi was chapter 8 of now what is being said is a 9-chapter story. That's gonna matter, unless suddenly chapters don't matter. Now you're gonna say that never really mattered just because you're God, I guess. I mean, now this is trying to find a way to justify laziness, and it can't be done. In discussing the article, Martin declared canon should be an added bonus, but not the end all be all of a story. Well, that's not what Ritbook's saying here. He's pretty much throwing it all out. And Martin's seemed to be a little softer and nicer toward the idea, but he doesn't want to be ruled by it. But the problem is, when major parts of the chronology of character and stories that you're coming into, especially when you're coming into, say, a chapter 9, you can't just throw things out and ignore it out of nothing more than laziness. And that's what it is. And a lack of story to deal with. Well, I just don't like that the story did that initially. Well, that's too bad. You're not doing chapter 1. You're doing chapter 9 or 8. So, there you go. More recently, Martin was asked about canonizing the original animated Battle of Coruscant. He responded, I personally don't really see the point of re-canonizing things. If that version doesn't contradict anything, pretty sure it's clear. Then anyone who likes it can consider it a part of the Star Wars story, but it leaves open the opportunity to retell it in the future. Well, you retell it to add other elements to it, to its initial plot points and whatnot, fine. But to completely rework it, and what if you want to, wouldn't it be cool if there was a death scene for Obi-Wan Kenobi? So if you do that, but it's cool. But then that violates, you know what? That's right, canon. He would add, fans generally put too much emphasis on what the company deems official. If you like the animated version, I do, then there's no reason to value it less than because it's not canon, Yeah, but the company deliberately does this for the nature of the narrative of the story that you're asking them to follow and thereby spend their money on. So if they invest the time in stories that they thought was necessary to understand where the characters are now, say the EU, expanded universe stories, which are now meaningless. And now you're picking and borrowing things for it. Now there's certain things that you can understand the position Disney was in, wanting to do a sequel trilogy, but the actors are now much older than the characters were in those stories. And how do you make it line up with what happened there? But it's some amount of the elements of those stories could have been more borrowed and utilized in those versions than were. And which was none at all, apparently. I mean, and which was very, very foolish. And to just say, it doesn't really matter. Well, if it doesn't really matter, Mr. Martin, then nothing you do matters. And why even make the movies or the TV shows or anything? Because it doesn't matter. It's all in the example earlier. The person was asking about recanonizing a past story since the Pacific story hasn't been explored in the new canon. And I said, if they like that story, there's no reason they can't accept it as real in their version of Star Wars. You did, but if there's an opportunity to tell that story now, that the new creator would not be beholden to that old version of the story. But no, they would be, in the sense that they're telling an element of the story. If they're going to retell it entirely, that it's not even the same story again, it creates problems, unless, of course, you're saying that one never happened. But so he concludes, it's all fake anyway. You can choose to accept whatever you want. I don't care. Again, billions of dollars spent to buy this thing, and you toss it away that it doesn't really matter. If you choose to only accept the official canon, cool. If you like to mix it match, well, yeah, people will. As of now, an enormous number of people no longer really see the Disney sequel trilogy as canon. As far as, and I'm one of them, as far as I'm concerned, because it's just so stupid. It doesn't fit. It doesn't work. Narratives don't fill in with the characters and whatnot. And also, I mean, it's just terrible. And so it's just some weird Star Wars Infinities. Remember that Dark Horse series of the comics? So there you go. It's just something that might have happened but didn't. Yeah. You're making excuses for the abomination, just saying, well, whatever you want, doesn't matter. I don't care. You should have cared, and you should have been more of a professional in your job. I know you're not the only one. You're just one of the story group, but you didn't do your job. And Luke Skywalker, that's the primary problem here, how you ruined that man and turned him into a attempted murder of his nephew. It's unforgivable. And it speaks to ignorance of the character storyline and narrative of that character within the original story. Remember, you're doing chapter 7, 8, and 9. You can't suddenly invent an entirely different person like that and call him Luke Skywalker. You could make someone else entirely, but not Luke Skywalker. And for you to sit there and say, well, canon doesn't really matter unless if you want it to. Well, we want it to. So that's why you're in the place you're in. So yeah, he goes on. Obviously, the writer of this article, this is bullshit. Well, of course it's fake. I know it didn't really happen. I mean, that's beside the point. But so he goes on, makes comparisons to Lord of the Rings and all that. And if you choose to believe it, Sauron won at the end. Yeah, why not? You could just say he won. You could say Darth Vader never died. Whatever. Oh, you could go in and guess what? Obi-Wan was Luke's father. Oh, stupid crap like that. Lazy, nonsensical stuff and lack of vision and ideas. And that's what the problem was. You didn't have any. Didn't know what to do. What continues beyond Return of the Jedi? That was the question, and you didn't have the answer for it. And that's that. All this little nonsense of trying to redefine terminology and as if that's going to work. I mean, good God, you're not even good at that. So, in the exchange here, he doesn't sound as bad as the article he refers to that he's so enamored with. So I don't know that he's actually a bad guy per se. Not like on par with Rian Johnson and people like that who were particularly nasty. But he's just wrong. And maybe he should be writing for something else. And maybe he'll find something better for him. But anyway, there you go. That's my whole take on this sort of thing. So, of course, I'll link the article below, Bounding into Comics, with all its links to the tweets and the IO9 article as well, if you want to torment yourself with that nonsense. Thank you for watching and listening. Say, why not like and subscribe, and check out that link description below. That'll take you to my mini stores that have plenty of goodies for you. Most notably, my comic book, which is canon. Night Night, available at indieplanet.com. And of course, you can catch my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, over at radiomisfits.com. And you can also catch my videos over at BitChute.